Well, welcome to July's chat with Dr. Chris Lemmon. I'm Dr. Chris Lemmon, hi out there. Um, and really kind of funny last month's chat. I started out, I must have hit a mute button. There was no sound at first. It's always strange, it's like uh, I always like to learn, but it just seems to be the older I get, the more I resist entertaining strangeness. That used to be a curious thing that I would have gone through as I would have pursued it and tried to figure out what all goes on. That why am I talking this way? Because the theme uh, this particular July is about redundancy or repetition. And why is redundancy and repetition so important? Because that's the very nature of our logical structure. The world that we live in, the way we define things, comes from repetition. We call a dog a dog. We all then learn to call a dog a dog. Yes, there's lots of different types of dogs, subsets within subsets, without question. But you start to see the unifying piece is the redundancy. We label things and then it becomes a topic that we can communicate about. We're actually, as a group, designed to be a group. We're designed to intermix. And then when we don't intermix, it becomes a nightmare, right? Which is what we see over and over again through history, wars, battles, judgments, biases, et cetera, et cetera. We, why don't we learn to get along? Well, and that is, I think, because of this little thing called repetition. You learned when you were a kid by repetition. Somebody told you, I don't know how many times that stay away from the door, don't do this, don't do that, don't touch the oven, it's hot, don't go out and play because it's raining, whatever. It over and over again. And when you got into school, the repetition was, oh, God, awful. I mean, you were sitting there doing little math equations. 2 + 2 is 4 forever in a day. And it seemed like it would never end. And then when you finally got old enough and got into college and they gave you ideas that you had to think about, it was really tough to stay disciplined. It was tough to get homework done. It was tough to like, do I stay home and study for a test? I'd go party with my friends. It's like that's a big choice that come into play. And then when you finally land a job, it's all once again redundancy. You sit there looking for something novel. I have so many friends that are in a job, make good money, and are bored with it. So they quit a good job, they go around and they make changes, trying to find something that interests them, but they won't go deeper in what they're sitting in the middle of. And so this is where we miss the mark. The automatic system allows you to recognize something, look at something, recognize that something, and bingo, that's it. If you look at it a little longer, if you look again, if you then open this brain up to be able to say, okay, the brain's designed to look at something and then go through its database of the most familiar. It's all about speed and efficiency, and then come up with an answer. So that's why people see a rope or garden hose on the ground and it's kind of like towards night and they think it's a snake and they jump or they get scared or people freak out and run screaming. I see where there's bats in the area and it's like when there's bats around, you need to pause a little bit, move a little slower. Yeah. Be respectful. The bats are using radar to find you. And if you're bobbing around, they think you're a bug and they're going to eat you. They're very disappointed if they get into mix, but you can start to see that I know a lot of women say, I don't want one stuck in my hair. Well, yeah, I could imagine that. But, stop, give the bat a chance to do what it's doing. All those things are a habit of repetition. Look at something, look at it again. I, I had a little, I do a lot of traveling and a lot of driving and my wife is in the music business. We go different places. She gets inspiration and I kind of like hiking all over the place and I like seeing things, right? And my wife has more redundancy than I do. She would like to go back to the same place over and over again. Come on, maybe you're one of those people that like to every summer go to Hawaii or something like that. It's like nothing wrong with that. To me, I don't want to ever have to go to the same place again. I want to go someplace different. Um, there's value in redundancy. You go someplace, you get to know it, you get comfortable with it, you get to experience things, and you get to open it up. You get to find out more about something. And there's advantage in that. And then the other end of it is I always want to see different things because then I could scale it differently. I can look at how the local people in Egypt are living. And then I can look at like last year, and then how the local people in Switzerland or in Germany or in France are living since I traveled up there. And I can start to take a look at that. That's very, very different, right? And so it's nice to be able to see did there were other people that I saw around that were talking about their experience, and I recognized their experience was really, really short. They not in compared to lots of other things. It's like, how diverse can I get? Um, I'm a coffee drinker, and I got in that habit when I was very, very young. I'm to some degree, I was lactate intolerant, so I couldn't drink milk. So my mother felt kind of bad because somewhere in her head there was this rule that I should be drinking milk because I'm a kid. So she would make me coffee, make half coffee, half milk. But I would drink that coffee and milk. Not only did the coffee keep me awake, but the reaction in my body, because it wouldn't process the lactates, would also keep me awake. So I would lay down and go to sleep. And then somewhere around midnight every night when I was a kid, preschool, I was up wide awake. My my pillow would be all wet from sweating. It's just like I had to go down in the basement where it was at least a little more comfortable temperature wise. The house was too warm upstairs. So I get down to the basement and it wasn't cold. It was just because the furnace is down there. It's not cold, but most certainly it was far more comfortable. I could throw a blanket on the floor and lay down that blanket and just lay there and relax. I could actually go to sleep. Um, just so I learned those things out of what? Years and years of redundancy. I started to learn how to operate best. So it's just like, so yeah, other people saying, I'm cold, and I'm thinking, no, I got to, because redundancy, I got to be able to say, if it gets a little colder, I mean, I like to sleep at 65 degrees. If it gets a little colder, then I can really appreciate that. Because my body doesn't quite process some things the same way other people do. So if you pay more attention, you not only find out what's expected of us, but we pay more attention. We also then get to our uniqueness. And and I really think that the skill in being a human is being able to find your uniqueness. Where is your skill at? I know lots and lots of people that have great skills and they call that a hobby. They're doing things that's kind of amazing. And I look at that and I'm going like, this is your hobby and you're having fun with it. But you could get into an occupation that would utilize those services and pay you. And they would come back and say, well, then it wouldn't feel the same. I like my hobby being my hobby. Maybe they carve stuff, they do things. And I know a lot of people that are in electronics as a hobby. I, I put up websites for a bunch of different people. I had at one time 18, 20 websites I was running for other people just because they needed a website. It was what I would call a beginner startup website. I'm no skill in it. You know, I just put it together for them. I helped them. Um, what I find is that I like to help people. I like to be able to share what I learned. Uh, I'm talking about people and they're talking about their experience. I'm talking about my experience, and I can see their experience was learned, and they build a story around it. That's what we do. We build a story. This is the way it is. And some of the variables were not true or correct. And that's the very nature of story correcting. The brain wants to expedite. So it takes all the details and makes up the rest of the crap and builds you a story. And you really have to pay attention to correct those other details and find out those stories. We were driving on this trip, which is what I started to tell you about, and I have navigation on, and I go through kind of a backcountry because I kind of like it. It's not a lot of traffic. Yes, it's not a freeway. I'm not going 75, 80 mile an hour, but I really don't want to go 75, 80 mile an hour with everybody on their phone and they're drifting in and out of the lane. And I see that at least every 5, 6 miles, I see somebody. And now, in the last couple of years, I see semis over in the fast lane, wimpy in and out of traffic, huge, big trucks, and that's just a scary thing. So everybody's on this agenda. I mean, that ticket for them is amazingly expensive, and it's like so they're in a rush, and they're not thinking in terms of like I've got thousands and thousands of pounds in behind me. I can't stop very quickly. I can't change lanes very quickly, but they get a little skill and they can maneuver. They're in a rush. And so it makes it scary. Anyway, my wife and I were on a trip and navigation is on and I make a turn and I look around and all of a sudden I recognize, been down this road before. This is not the way I want to go. So I'm pulling over and my wife said, well, look at navigation. It says you're right on target. Well, navigation does when you change from one path to another, it just picks up another piece of memory. Why am I telling you this? Because I'm telling you the brain does the same thing. It just picks up another piece of memory. So she says, you're right on, Bart. You just don't remember. You're old. Come on. You don't remember. I'm going, what? Okay, I'll buy that. So I'm driving down the road. I'm on navigation. All of a sudden, I'm getting this little town. I got stoplights. I'm going like, we we didn't. Well, I've been here before. I recognize this little town. We came to this little town once. I recognize it, but this was not on our trip that we've done every year. It's like, no, this is not it. So I'm thinking, okay, that's all right. I'm not going the way I was before, but I know what time I started. Let's just go down this path. It's going to be a different way. And so see what happened. I also wrote the mileage down when I started. So actually, this path was longer, mileage wise, longer, maybe 20 miles longer. But actually, once we get into it, the road was faster. It was more like an express road. It was 4 lanes instead of 2 lanes. There were traffic moving. And so part of it was I made good time on it. So I wound up at the destination at exactly the same time. Now, for my preferences, I would have liked my lonely country road where I could see sights and see trees and see rivers and waterfalls, and that was more to my nature. But this way it was like boom, going down north, south, right to the United States, some route I was on. That wasn't a freeway, but it was most certainly a main route. We got there at the same time, not a problem whatsoever. I got to experience the whole destination of this trip. So I learned something, and now I can come back and I'd say my preference is that country road. But now I know 2 ways to go. One's not an advantage over the other, so I'll probably stick with my country road. But if the weather's really bad, I've been on my country road when the weather was really challenging, raining like crazy, and those windy roads are difficult when it's weather restricted. So now I've expanded my database. Uh, if it's really raining, it's miserable weather, snowing, I got a different way to go that would more accommodate the weather. But this is what we call learning. This is what we humans do. We come into something, we use redundancy, repetition, we do things over again, we make comparison because the brain doesn't make legitimate comparisons. It simply shortcuts everything. It's expedited. It's really an energy burning machine and it wants to conserve. It wants to go. Just like the navigation wants to take me the shortest way, this thing wants to take you the shortest way. It doesn't even care. I have a place my wife and I get a kick out of that's somewhere by Santa Fe, New Mexico. I guess the roads have been changed over time, and there's an old dirt road. And I went down it a little ways one time. My navigation took me onto this dirt road. And I'm like, this is supposed to be shorter. And I'm driving down the dirt road. And finally my wife says, this road's getting a little rougher. And I said, well, it's an adventure. It's like, let's see where it goes. She says, we're going to get down here somewhere and it could dead end. And then we're going to have to go all the way back. So let's go back and go the way we always go. Okay, she got a really good point. Personally, I would go down that road just to see where it went. I don't mind coming back. I'm not in a hurry. I'm not going anywhere. I have a schedule in my head that we're supposed to be somewhere at a certain time to check into a hotel. If I'm an hour later, I don't know if I care, right? But anyway, she's correct. It's like we got an agenda. So let's turn around, go back off the road, get on down there. That's like so those are the pieces of repetition. I'm telling you the story between that and my wife because she works things, she conserves and works things because she's in business. She's still working for a living. I'm just a lazy old man. She's still working for a living and she's running a business. And so she's expediting things and trying to stay on schedule. So her brain is really key to this is the way we do it. This is the way we do it. This is the way we do it. Right. And I'm the adventurer who basically I'm doing a job and somebody wants to have me do it less efficiently, have me do more things to accomplish the goal. I just look at that and said, I'll try it for a little while. I try it for a little while. I thought, I don't, I don't like this. It takes me longer to accomplish the goal. So I quit. I go find another job. I, I've never been out of work in my life more than a week or two. Never. So I just go find another job. It's like not a big deal. But I know today I hear from everybody it's not that easy, and I recognize it's not that easy of filling out applications online. You're doing this, you're doing that. It's like it's a little bit more challenging, um, and and you're not interacting with a person. When I was doing interviews, I would always throw a lot of variables at a person that's interviewing me so that I could sell them. I'm a salesman, right? So I could sell them more. I'm a teacher, whichever way you want to talk about it. I throw a lot of redundant pieces. I would say, I have a skill in that. I've done that. I've done this. I toss them out. And so some of it is marginal, but nonetheless, I toss the package in. When I've done, the people that I'm interviewing are putting a vote in for, hey, this guy's got a lot of skill set. That comes into the pitch. I have done a lot of interviewing for people for jobs and hired a lot of people. And I'm sitting there with people and they're not telling me very much. I have to ask them questions. I have to squeeze it out of them. They're not pitching them. They're basically saying, what's your education? And they say, well, I went to college and I graduated in this. Like, tell me more. Education is not like I got a degree. Tell me, what do you know? What is your experience in life? What is your hobbies? What do you do? Are you active in something? You part of a sports team? Do you part of a community group? Do you a Boy Scout leader? Well, all those make a difference in a job. Yeah, you may not think so, but as one time as an employer and one time as actually spending many, many years training people into job performance and improving job performance, I found that all those skills give a person range and diversity. They look at something and they see the advantage to that. They see what's going on. They can get a sense of that diversity. Yep. Repetition is how we learn. So we started this year out looking at awareness. So the theme for this year is this is a kind of a path of awareness. How do we increase awareness? In the very beginning, I said, notice your energy flow. What's going on? Sit down, get grounded, feel the chair under you, sit there a little bit and notice the energy flow. If I put my foot out to the left like I just did, you can't see that, and then put my foot back, what do I feel on the leg? Do I feel that muscle tighten when I put it out and when I put it back under the floor? Do I feel it relax? Of course. So that's energy doing its job. It's processing, it's doing it. It'll do it redundantly if I'm hiking, walking up a hill. It'll do it over again. If I'm sitting all day, it's not going to do much of anything. Oh, what does that tell you? That means if you're sitting all day, at least every hour you get to get up and walk around a little bit. You have to move a little bit to get energy to flow into that, right? Because this piece looks at the thing you spend the maximum amount of time on, and it always defaults you to that. So all these people say, well, I know I need to do some exercise. I know I need to do this. I should have a hobby, but I'm, so tired. I get home from work. I just sit there. You sit all day and then you come home and sit there and watch TV all night. It's like, really? It's like, wow, this has got the message. You want to sit. So it makes you sit. You don't recognize that's what it's doing, but it's what it's doing. That's why attention and range and repetition are so extremely important to keep a human healthy. It's because of the fact that we eat different foods, right? The average person has a list of foods they like and they eat those foods. I am telling you, if I go to a restaurant, there are certain foods in that particular restaurant that I think do a really good job. Every now and then I'll try something different. I don't go out that much, but I did when I was in business and I was doing a territory and training drivers. I would be eating out all the time. For probably around 10 years, I ate out almost all my meals. I actually enjoyed having days off where I could then pull up a recipe and cook something different. One day I'd have a Creole dish. The next day I might have Chinese food. The next day maybe Japanese food, then Indian food. Then all of a sudden some German dish with sparkle. I I would have fun on those weekends when I wasn't working, doing some different stuff. So during the week, wherever I ran into a restaurant, I didn't have the same thing at every restaurant. I would go to a restaurant and say, they make this dish particularly good. So I'm going to have this dish when I come here. It gets us out of the repetition. If that place I frequented like every day for years, then I would most certainly try everything on the menu. But I'm just trying to facilitate quickly. It's like, I'm out on the road, I'm staying in a hotel, I grab a bite to eat, get to the hotel, sit down and read for about an hour or so. Reading is another redundancy. I like to read diversity of stuff. Right now, I'm reading a book on trees. I just finished a book on the latest information on scanning brains with fMRIs, right? So before that, I read a book on complexity theory, which is mostly all mathematical formulas. So it's kind of like really stretched my brain. So right now I'm reading a book on trees. The next book I'm going to read is one on a fiction. I try to read maybe three, four fiction books a year. Uh, they're kind of nice. To me, they're kind of nice because I can sit down, I can read about 150 pages. There's nothing important in a fiction book. Even if I get it wrong, it doesn't matter. It's just all fantasy, right? So I'm just reading a fiction story, and then I can finish it in a couple of days. I get into a book like complexity theory, and it's all mathematical formulas to explain those things that we don't have language structure to understand, or third level abstractions. So I'm sitting there looking at these formulas, scratching my head. I've got to search, I got to refresh what all those symbols mean and what that statement is. Symbols give you a range of possibilities. A plus B equals C, right? Algebra, if you remember that in school, that started to open up possibilities. 2 plus 2 is 4. You don't have a whole lot of possibilities there. 2 plus 2 is 4. So it could be two pumpkins, two watermelons, two whatever. That's But when you get A plus B equals C, now all of a sudden you can have those symbols assigned for things. Uh, the strength in the human matrix is to be able to generate symbols. We do that as signs, landmarks. You go down the road to the water tower, turn left. I can remember when I first got to Grass Valley, I was talking to a guy and he says, "You fish?" And I said, "Yeah, a little bit." And he said, "There's a great fishing place. You go down this road, you stay on a dirt road, and you get to where there's a big turn in the road. And there's a little tiny place halfway through that turn you can pull over. That's the place you want to pull. If you go a little bit too far, you get around the turn, you'll see on the side of the hill an abandoned vehicle halfway down the hill. Someone ran off the road, I guess. And he said, you'll see that up there, and that tells you went too far. So you're going to have to go up a little ways, turn around, come back to that white spot. So I did. I went up there with my fishing gear and my kids, and we went up there and fished in that creek. It was really fun. And that was it. Now, later on, a year later, I shared that with someone new that was coming into there. And they were working not in the same field as I was, but they lived in the neighborhood. And I told them about that fishing spot. They were far more adventurous than I was. They went up to the fishing spot and they went past it and they saw that cart. So they parked back at the fishing spot instead of fishing. They hiked up that hill, went on down to find that cart. And guess what? That car had been there for, I don't know, 20 years maybe, 15, 20 years. I forget the date, the year of the vehicle. But there was a body in that car, of course, long dead. So that guy ran off the road out there. It's a dirt road, backcountry. He ran off the road somewhere in there, died in that car. The windows are busted out. That, it became a feeding ground for birds. Wasn't a pretty picture, but nonetheless, he found a body in that. And finding a body in that, they were able to come up and eventually identify the guy. And so he was just some local that up and disappeared, and nobody knew what happened to him, and they forgot about it. And his remains were out there. He was headed, I don't know where. The road, I think, eventually went back to a logging camp. Maybe most of all those old roads went back into a logging camp. And I was I've been back into some of those old abandoned logging camps and places that were a little town. They used to have a store and a restaurant, a couple of different buildings, and maybe a little place with like 3 or 4 room hotels, and it's all now years and years long abandoned. So they were just kind of like the remnants or remains. And when my kids were little, we used to always go on adventures back into that backcountry, and so. I found an old mining town. There's a, you go down a road and there's a sign saying dangerous road, very narrow turns, straight grade, wise to not go down this road. So to me, that's like, okay, I turn here. So I turn there and I go down with my kids and we get down in this canyon and there's an old abandoned town. I found it later on. That's where Crown Zellerbeck lived for a while, down in that little mining town. And in that little mining town, there was an orchard. And we were picking apples and eating them off the orchard. They were still good. And up a dirt road, up a hill, there was a beautiful view of the river, which was right on the other side of the town. That's why the miners would go down and mine the river. From the top of the hill, you could see the river and the turn. You could see the piles where the miners had shoveled from mining, shoveled all the debris over to the side. And and up there was a cemetery. And so it's like I went around and took pictures of all the graves. We even did some rubbings on the tombstones. If you've ever done that, it's kind of fun. So you can do some rubbings with charcoal on a tombstone and get all the letters and if you're into tombstones. Uh, the kids most certainly liked it. We had just fun. They just take the animals out there, take the dog out and have them run around. And it was like, it makes it an adventure. I remember going down there one time and there was this Ranger Bob sitting down there. Of course, his name wasn't Bob, but he was sitting down there and I see him and I go over and I talk to him. I'm thinking that, we were out there for the day. So I wanted to make sure that we weren't in trouble for being out there. So I went over and talked to him. And I said, is there a problem being out here? And he said, no, as long as you're kind of careful. There's a lot of old buildings over there kind of rotten. I said, yeah, I come out here all the time. And he said, that's good. He said, I've been in the Forest Service now for 2 years. And he said, I've never seen this before. And I'm not even too sure which one of these roads take me back out of here. And I go, oh, so he's politely telling me he's lost. And I said, okay, let me explain. That road goes up to the top of the hill and dead ends. It's a cemetery and a great view. So if you're out here, before you leave, you should go check it. This one goes on over, and it's a little bit of a parking area, but a lot of it's fallen off the side of the hill. So it's a little dangerous. I wouldn't particularly want to drive. It's hard turning around, but it's a pathway going down the river where they would be mining for gold back in the day. And then there's the town. If you go back on this road, it takes you out of there. There's a bend in the road, and there's one that goes off to the side, and it just goes on down, and there's a building down there and nothing. So it's some type of a warehouse or something down there. It's a big building, but it's all falling apart. So you want to hang left and go all the way up. It's a steep road, and it'll take you right on back to the main dirt road for all in back country. Do you see how all those pieces are redundant pieces that you learn over time? You reteach this thing to be able to store things and put things together by redundant pieces, repetitions, repetitions, repetition. Could I go back and find that place again? I don't know. I'm not all that sure, right? It's been a lot of years. I was maybe, I don't know, maybe somewhere in my 40s when I was living up there. And now I'm 82. That's 40 years. I'll lay you odds that the countryside has changed tremendously. It could be that those roads have been abandoned so long that they're going to be very difficult to find. I have been on roads where you're driving down the road and you could see, looking out the window, you could see rocks popping off the edge of the cliff as you go down a place called the Foot Road. It was actually a road that has no cement in it. It was built by the Chinese laborers, and it's just all just a rock road. They just put rocks and wedged them in place, and the road going down to the river is just rock. And yeah, you have to have a Jeep or like a Volkswagen narrow wheelbase to go down it. And even at that, at times the wheels are pretty much running on the edge. It's a little scary. And of course, once you start down that road, you're committed because there's no turnaround. So when you get to the bottom, you can turn around and you can get back up. But other than that, if the river's high, you don't want to go down because then there's no room for a turnaround. And so then it's really a challenge. I've been on places like that where I had to jack the vehicle up and knock it off the jacks and kind of turn it around by keep jacking it up and bumping it off to get out of a place. Um, so you see, the repetition is very, very important. When you see something, always say, "This is my story. I put this together, but it might not be true." So then take another look. Be willing to take another look. Be willing to stay with something for a little while. Repeat. Look again, experience again, listen again, talk again, right? As you get more and more repetitions, you develop more and more understanding and skill. And most powerful tool. If you're not used to feeling what's going through your body, this brain will take you down the same path every single time. And eventually you become the fool for thinking that's the limitation of it. And that's where bias comes. Bias says that this is the way it is. I know the way it is. Game's over. You're now a happy fool, right? You start to look at repetition and you start to say, oh, okay, there's nothing wrong with that bias. They see that as a viewpoint. Nothing wrong with that. That's one possibility. But there's others. They're not willing to look to another, and we are willing to look to another. So therefore, we're developing range. The difference between the two is range, not correctness, not perfection, range. This package, come on. We live so long and we die. We think we're trying to figure out something perfect. Do you think we're trying to bring wisdom to the world? I don't think so. It's just kind of like we're here to have an experience. I think if we can open up range, we can bring more things into play, create more diversity. And that's what we're trying to do. Um, I love reading this little book on trees because it starts to talk about it's a forester that wrote the book, and he'd been doing forestry in Germany for 40, 50 years. So most of his life, he's probably retired. But he wrote the experience about old forests, new forests, and what the differences is, and how the we have destroyed all the old forests, not everywhere, but most everywhere, and especially mostly through Europe, and because we needed lumber. And so now we're growing it and we're planting and we're doing a lot of things we're doing is to produce wood to build houses and not to produce a forest. So a forest is an ecosystem that makes a huge difference. It helps provide something called oxygen on the planet. We like to keep breathing. Uh, we really need this environment, and there's all kinds of microorganisms that grow in there, and there's a balance that sits in them. So when we all of a sudden kill those forests and don't allow these creatures to grow, we then run out of a balance for the organisms in the world. We get sickness, we get disease, we get things that are carried on bugs because the bugs that normally ate them are no longer in existence. We wiped out that whole piece. Now, that's just a theory, right? But you start to see that's a different theory than what we normally get on YouTube. But it's a diversity in being able to look at it. Can we bring back the complexity that was originally on this planet to be able to maintain a balance on this planet? Was the weather going to change? Everything is going to change. That's the very nature of it. It's designed to be in a change. This has been millions and millions of years. We look at the oceans, we look at it and we think, wow, this is the way it's always been. No, we can go back in time when water came to the planet. It's like, wow, is that theory correct? I don't know, but they got a lot of research on it. So something, an asteroid with frozen water, all of a sudden hit this planet and most of these planets because originally this was a molten ball of molten rock, right? In the formation, a chunk all just molten and hot from the sun, which was much hotter back in those days, a few million years ago. And so when water hit it, it all evaporated and created what we call an atmosphere. Wow. So that's where we got our atmosphere. And because we're not too far away from the sun or too close to the sun, we managed to keep our atmosphere. So some of the places out there got too cold. The atmosphere collapsed and then wound up being lost. Other places it was too hot. The atmosphere just evaporated. So we become the water planet. We have water and we have an atmosphere. Two criterions that we humans need. And I don't think we're going to find that in another planet around this sun. Yes, they want to go to the moon or they want to go to Mars, but really you're just going there to build a hole in the ground where you can get in there and haul in dirt. We have to have dirt to grow food because the microorganisms of dirt support this whole process. Yet this is a lot of complexity. We don't get the complexity unless we look at it again and look at it again and look at it again. uh, I like to I like to drink a lot of coffee. Uh, I probably drink a lot of coffee because I talk too much too. So use my voice box. Anyway, my pitch is all for repetition. This is kind of the changer. Uh, Normally we come back and we talk about meditation as being the changer. Meditation is the changer because it simply allows you to look at things again and again and again. But unfortunately, a lot of people with meditation are kind of like people with computers. They're going in and they're doing searches for tons and tons of garbage that is meaningless, right? Is it adventure? Is it fun? Yeah, of course it's fun. It's adventuresome. We can go in till we could go in. We could look at this. We look for that. We look at that. Um, and that's what I see. I see people doing long meditations and are getting in all kinds of strangeness. And so it's like, wow, yeah, most certainly. You can find a lot of diffusion out there. But what we're finding is that, at least what we'll call wisdom, is we get something that has a potential that's this far from my head to be able to pull into my head and be able to have something I can work with. If something's out there 20 feet from my head, it might be 200 or 300 years till it can that potential could cross in and have an acceptance, a definition, and our structured redundant world for it. And then we'd have a utility for it. Right now, if I see something out there, it's like, so yes. So when I talked about the last two videos about influence, when I was a kid, influence was really weird. In the 60s, I was going around all these different organizations that are out there and they had all kinds of strange phenomena. I can remember one group, they had a box and we'd sit in a dark room and all of a sudden a face would appear in this empty box and it'd be talking to you. It's like, holy cow. So we all wound up in a trance and we all imagined that, right? There was nothing in that box. But the fact that we could get into a trance could tune that in and everybody could then imagine the same thing and the box communicated something. But what I found out about it was really very quickly, the box was communicating the bias of the people that were putting it on. Somehow or another, they became the lead influence. And I'm sitting there watching and think, this is really cool, but that face in the box is telling me something about me. And there's more diversity to that. It's asking me to become less, not to become more. So yeah, so I quit hanging out with them because after a couple of months, I realized, well, uh, that's nice. It's interesting. But now today, we'd be able to scan their brains and find out where that image come from. We could then look at patterns. So all of a sudden, it's not so strange and metaphysical. It's like, Oh my goodness. It's like this is being able to tune imagination together. We can tune imagination together. We train for tuning imagination together so we can work as a creative group in a research team or work with people who have problems or even health issues. Pretty much that's all tuned to a central piece. The downside of some of that tuning is it's too narrow in range. You really need to sit with it more. But that's why I'm talking to you about repetition. Whatever it is you do, kind of take some time that you got free and look at what you're doing and say, is there other ways? This will make a case for how you do it. But just for fun, see if there's other ways, because it might be a reward in it in some way, shape, or form, right? And I could tell you millions of stories where I've done that, but this will all take up your time. And you guys, some of you like these long talks. Some of you like to see them a little shorter. Uh, it just gets so funny. I put out an hour talk and then I talk to people who have listened to it and it's like they can handle about 15, 20 minutes and they got to come back to it and come back to it to hear the whole thing through. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, okay, whatever. So that's the nature of repetition. You get this? And I'm saying for me and for everyone else, we kind of got to do that. We get something that's really big, we have to come back to it. We have to come back to it. Now, in my reading material, what I do, I read a book on a topic, and then I read another person's book on a topic, and another person's book on a topic, same topic. And after 4 or 5 books on the same general topic, I'm getting a diversity of views, which broadens my range out. I don't want to read that one person's book 5 times so that I know the truth about it, for heaven's sakes. That's like listening to that image in a box. No, I want to get a bunch of people's view so I can then make some determination of how big that is. And then as it gets big, I can say, wow, then what do I get to learn from this? That's my repetition. All right. So it's been real fun. I'm Dr. Chris Lemmon. And so if you have any questions, go ahead and feel free to email me, chris@wizardscatch.com, and I will be delighted to answer your questions. And if a lot of people have similar questions, I will do a talk on that. And so thank you very much for your time. And go out there and do some redundant repetitions. Call it exercise. Probably be healthy for you. Okay.